Welcome to Open House, the real estate and mortgage show on News Talk 580 CFRA.
With Frank Napolitano and Paul Rushforth, here is Steve Gregory.
Well, look who's back.
Yes, I'm back.
Look who's back, Mr. Rushforth.
And, of course, Frank is not here, which makes it an even more beautiful show without Frank.
How are you, Frank?
I'm well, thanks. How are you guys?
Good.
We missed you, Frank.
You missed a nice snowstorm.
I miss being in the studio. I'll be back soon enough. I'm on assignment.
All right, good.
On
good.
assignment.
On assignment.
You missed a nice snowstorm, Frank.
I heard. Not a lot of snow where I am right now.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I do. I do have a guest. Obviously, everyone knows I was away in Costa Rica, and I was away. I was actually doing an ayahuasca spiritual retreat for 12, 13 days. Met a good close friend, actually from Kingston, Andrew Rodmell, and I brought him on a show for a couple reasons, Frank, and you'll understand this. He does landscaping design and landscaping in the Kingston area. I'm trying to bring him to Ottawa because he has a very, very similar philosophy to what you and I do with our businesses, Frank. And, I asked him, I said, are you going to grow bigger and get bigger and bigger? And he says, well, the first things first is I want to make sure I always wow all my clients. I'll turn down business if it doesn't mean I'm wowing my clients, which really spoke to me. And he's doing some very, very unique things that I think would be just brilliant in Ottawa. Not only is his wife handling all the horticulture of the business, he's doing all the heavy landscaping, the light landscaping, and hard.
I love how you're talking about him like he's not here.
Well, you know what? It's his first time. It's his first time on the radio, so I wanted to. But the one thing that I really was intrigued about is he does work with some realtors in Kingston, and I'd love to bring him here to work with me on this kind of stuff. But he works with some realtors in Kingston, and what they're doing is they are actually sprucing up, staging the outside of properties, spending some money on gardens and flowers and edging and grass and all that kind of stuff to make sure the outside of these properties are really appealing. And they're generating way more money in some of these properties because of what they're doing on the outside. So I just wanted to welcome Andrew Rodmell to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Paul.
He's going to just talk a little closer into the mic.
How did you come up with the idea of helping out with staging outside?
As I was telling Paul when we were in Costa Rica, we actually sold a bunch of properties during COVID and did quite well. And we started working with our realtors back at home. And we realized that staging the outside of a home through landscaping and through garden design and crisping and cleaning things up and adding new mulch and flowers and coming up with a plan was actually generating really good results. And realtors became very receptive of it when photos were starting to be taken for staging and whatnot. The benefits were really, really big.
Am I naive? I hadn't heard about this before.
Well, I haven't heard about this in Ottawa. I'm sure it's happening on a one-off here and there, but
whenever you hear about staging, you never think about staging the outside.
You never do, right? I always talk about curb appeal, how important curb appeal is, but for me, that's more like tidying up, getting rid of the weeds, stuff like that. But I never thought of let's get some gardens and get the flowers going and new flowers and new shrubs and edging all the grass and stuff like that. And so there's some cost to this that the sellers would incur on this, but at the same time, if you're spending, let's say, an example of $5,000 to make the outside look absolutely perfect, and you're getting an extra $50,000, is that worth the money? I think it's worth the money.
And how many more people would come to see the house?
How many more people? So, but the one thing that really aligned, obviously, Andrew and I are coming from a very tough experience, let's say, but a very rewarding experience in our ayahuasca retreat. And if anyone's never done one, I strongly recommend it. It's absolutely brilliant and beautiful. But the one thing that spoke to me with Andrew is he aligns with what Frank and I try to do on the show, and that our business and the people that we work with are so important. And, a lot of landscaping companies, I'll never knock them, but they're there to do a job. He's there to do what the clients need and wow the clients. And I think it just spoke a lot along the lines of what Frank and I do in our business. And that's why I thought it'd be a great fit. And not only that, Frank, he's agreed to do a $100,000 renovation back for both you and I for our backyard. So there you go, Frank. Congratulations. We got something.
Thank you. I'll stay quiet for the rest of the show.
Yeah. That would probably help with appraisals too, I would think.
It would definitely help with appraisals. It would help with everything, and I mean, it would definitely help getting the home sold. We're in a time right now, and Greg will tell you. I mean, we went through COVID where you could have the ugliest house, and that you'd come in and say, "Oh, I really need to do this, this, and this," and I'd say, "Don't do it. Get your house on the market. It's going to sell overnight." Yeah. Not anymore. Now it's along the lines of if your house doesn't look absolutely perfect and something's out of place, it's a tough sell. It's a really tough sell. And I don't think we spend enough time on the outside on the curb appeal. And I just, like I said, before meeting Andrew in Costa Rica, I just thought, curb appeal meant cleanliness and weeding and stuff. Wash the driveway. I didn't really think about, let's put in brand new gardens and new shrubs and plants and things like that to really make the house appealing to go inside.
And they don't have to be extravagant, do they?
No, we can do half-day jobs where we just do a big cleanup, or if it's a higher-end property, if the investment's worth it and people do listen to the realtors, which we found is the price increase has been substantial for most people, and they've sold a lot quicker.
Well, it's first impression, right?
It's huge. It's the inside staging we learned is very, very big, but the outside is incredible. The transformations that we make when you see the drone photography and the staging and all the photography outside, it makes the biggest difference in the world. Our before and after photos, it looks like you're going from an old dwelling to like a brand new puffed up home. And it's
so how do you find the time to do this? Because obviously you have a business going, and then they will call you and say, hey, we just got this listing.
Yeah, we do make the time for realtors because usually it is a pretty quick turnaround when they do want to get the photos done. So we do make the time in our schedule to get these jobs done at a quick rate. But yeah, on a day-to-day basis, our normal clientele are, we do full garden design, full builds, water features. So we're pretty busy as it goes. But like Paul said, our attention to detail and quality is very important to us. So we left about 50% of our calls on the table last year because we couldn't fulfill the need.
Wow.
That's what I liked about it. He didn't go fulfill the need and ruin his reputation. But the company is Little Schoolhouse Garden Design and Landscaping. Now, they are in Kingston, potentially could come to Ottawa, but I'm trying to bring him full-time to Ottawa, so he will come. He will come.
Now, where did the name come from?
So one of the houses that we actually sold during COVID was an 1852 limestone schoolhouse, and we fully renovated it. And my wife Danielle came up with the name Little Schoolhouse Garden Design. We were having troubles finding it, and we felt that it fit. And it was this beautiful little schoolhouse in Sydenham, Ontario. And fast forward 5 years, we're just running full steam ahead.
So what's the website?
The website is www.littleschoolhouse.ca. And you can also send us an email at littleschoolhousegarden@gmail.com, or you can call us directly at 613-561-9800.
Are you sure Andrew's never done this?
Yeah. He's good. We'll get those details out at the end of the show.
I think this was Costa Rica that might have had something to do with it.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right, Frank, now we get down to business. Frank the businessman. What are we, 50-50 now for a rate cut?
Wasn't a dull week, was it?
Lots
of activity going on.
Crazy week, including yesterday.
Yeah.
The circus yesterday was something else. But anyway, lots of news, and it could change on a dime. That's how quick things change. And, the inflation numbers have come down. They're starting to feel some rumbles south of the border, certainly with their economy starting to slip a little bit. So, obviously, the new president wants to fire, tens of thousands of government employees. And then on top of that, you've got him saying I can't believe he said World War III, but he did yesterday. You add on top of that everything else that's happening in Canada, provincial election over with, federal election likely to come, new Liberal leader next week. There's just so much going on that the markets are scratching their heads. One day we see them go up, bond markets, the next day they come down, and it's all over the map right now. So 50-50 is a good number, I think, to figure out what's going to happen with prime rate on March 12th. We'll have a better idea next weekend, only because on Friday we get the Canada job report. So the job report comes out on Friday, and that'll give us a good indication, not to mention the fact, are tariffs starting on Tuesday or not?
Well, we don't know.
Nobody knows.
He says yes, but...
You know what's funny is opinions and economist, everyone has one, right? I read a report.
I'm not sure that's exactly
you know what I'm saying. But you read something, you're like, absolutely, it's starting, and they're like, oh no, it's now paused till April 6th, and I was like, I don't think anyone really knows.
But that's him. It's on again. It's off again.
Well, well, we know that, right? Like the one thing I will say, listen, love Trump, hate Trump. We don't talk about politics on this show, and I'm not stupid enough with the business I am to even discuss politics. He's done some stupid things. He's done some wonderful things, and there's lots of good that will come out of it and lots of bad that will come out of it. That's all I'm going to say. But it's the only problem with what's going on right now is I believe our economy, our rates, the housing market is on a standstill. And we're really in the world of Trumpism right now, and he decides where our market is going right now. Unfortunately, that is exactly the truth. And whether rates come down, whether our market takes off, even the threat of tariffs, even the thought of tariffs has slowed down this market, has put a pause on the rates and the thought of what's happening with the rates until we realize what Trump wants to do.
Yeah. Like if there's no tariff, the rates will probably hold, right, Frank?
Well, I think so. It feels that way. That being said, again, if that labor report comes out on Friday and the unemployment rate has gone up, which is expected, then the Bank of Canada does maybe have another rate cut in them for March 12th, and then see how the tariffs impact the economy before they have to make a decision on April 16th. So,
yeah, but they have to be proactive.
Either
if
way,
these tariffs come in, don't they have to be proactive, Frank?
They do. They may have to do it before April 16th, but, tariffs will take some time before the job losses start to accrue, before you really start to see it. So tariffs wouldn't impact, as a lot of businesses are preparing for it already, but the impact is normally 4 to 8 weeks before you really see the impact. So I think they'd have until April 16th. They'd have a good idea by April 16th how much of an impact it's had on employment, on the economy, and then from there they could make a decision as to whether to aggressively cut or leave things the way they are.
521-TALK, 521-8255. We will be right back. Welcome back to the show. Rushforth is here. Frank is on assignment. Andrew's little house on the prairie. Greg is here.
Yeah.
Starting to take pictures again, Greg. Getting ready to get rid of all that snow and go out and do it all over again.
Oh, you betcha. Yeah, lots of updates with the snow and all that. But...
the worst part is coming up is when the snow disappears. And I remember when Greg used to work for a different company, and I used to hire Greg to have to go out and just take the outside, like just to snap the outside pictures. It used to cost me an arm and a leg. Now he has to do it for me because he's on payroll. But yeah, that's a tough time of year when the snow disappears and he has to actually go back out and take all.
You got to be on your game, right? You can't wait.
But he has to go out when the snow's gone and the grass is still average and take pictures. But then he's got to go back in sort of summer when the grass, if it's still listed, when the grass is actually beautiful, and take pictures. So
I've never known you to have a listing that long.
Well, thanks, Steve. I'm glad you said that. I was going to go there, but I didn't want to go there.
It's true. And back to what we were talking about in the first segment with Andrew, I can always tell pulling up to a property to do the photos and the video and stuff. The people who take care of it, you can tell right away that the inside's going to be awesome as well. And those properties never last on the market. It is literally that first impression in photos, and when people drive up to the front, it's crazy how fast those properties go if they're priced right.
But keep in mind, your first impression to get someone through the door, like the first picture that you have to put on the MLS and on our realtor system is the front picture. So if the front picture looks like garbage, you're not getting someone through the door. And that's probably one of the things that Andrew does with his company that really appealed to me is the fact that not only is it going to look nice and decluttered and clean, but it's actually now going to have flowers and gardens and all that kind of stuff. And that'll get people in the door. And then once you get people in the door, and I tell people when I list their house that, listen, I'm not here to sell your house. And I just pause right there and they're like, what? You are here to sell my house. I'm like, no, my job is to market and advertise and present your house in the best light to get bodies through the door. Once they get through the door, your house has to sell itself.
Yeah.
But I can get bodies to the door, but the curb appeal is the start of that process. And if I can't get people to like your outside, I can't get people to like your inside. So curb appeal is so important. And this is a tough time of year, Greg? Like when you're out shooting properties right now with, 6 feet of snow in front of it, it's a tough time of year.
Yeah, especially out in the areas with townhouses where the properties are a little closer together. And
the snowbanks are like through the roof.
Absolutely. Yeah. So a little more drone work in the winter just to get it up over those snowbanks, when we can, when it's not snowing like crazy or super windy. But yeah, it's a tough time of year to get decent photos outside.
I got a bit of a funny story for you. So our sign company that we use, when the house sells, we send them a message saying, please go put the sold sign. Well, it's literally like flipping the sign. And sometimes my agent lives like right around the corner. And I'm always like, oh my God, is it really like $20? You can't go flip it yourself? So I sold my 2 townhomes that I had on the market. I sold them while I was away. And I was like, you know what? I'll go flip it myself. Well, it was so far up on the snowbank. I called Jocelyn. I'm like, can you sell the sign company to go flip it, please? I'm not getting up on that snowbank.
So listen, it's March 1st today. So psychologically, is this going to kickstart the market, or is there too much going on?
There is a lot going on, and I'm surprised. Like, I always keep my pulse on the market. I mean, even when I was in Costa Rica, when I was in my retreat, I tried to sort of focus on my retreat. But when I came out of it, I still wanted to focus on what's going on in the market. And it's still stagnant. It's like that train that's just waiting to go, but it's not going just yet. Our number of sales was actually decent this month, ahead of where we were last February, which I assume the market might be a little bit ahead as well. But saying that, it's not your typical February going into March type of market. Usually right now our market is just starting to fly.
We're a very delayed spring market.
Last year we didn't have a spring, so that's why the numbers are going to be a little bit skewed. If we're ahead of February of last year, well, keep in mind, we didn't have a February last year. Like, we didn't have a February, March, April. Like, we didn't have a spring market last year. So our numbers will probably be a little bit ahead. But saying that, there's so many variables right now. We're still waiting on rates. We're waiting on Mr. Trump. We're waiting on inflation. We're waiting on the job report. Federal election. Like, we were waiting on the provincial election. There's so many things that we are waiting on for this market to take off that, when I talk to people and I'm just like, okay, so there's lots of property in the market. You ready to go? And they're like, well, there's just so many variables. We don't know if now is the right time to buy. And I'm still saying, though, is once we address all these variables that are on the market, I do believe our market is going to take off. I just thought it was going to take off a lot sooner than it has already, but nobody expected. We saw tariffs coming a long time ago. That's part of the platform with Trump.
Oh, we didn't.
Yeah, we never know, right? His threats sometimes are just threats and sometimes they're reality, but I didn't realize how paused our market is on one person and one thing that he's trying to bring in, and it's really put a damper. Saying that, we're listing a hell of a lot of properties, Greg. Like, you must have been super busy in February, or was it a little slower than the February before?
No, it was definitely busier February over February. I shot more. I can't remember the exact numbers. I looked them up a couple of days ago, but definitely shot more properties this February than last February. But it still wasn't the February we'd seen in previous years. So there's still some room for the market to
Frank,
take
where's
off.
the level of pre-approvals at right now?
Level of pre-approvals slowed down a little bit. We're up about 45% from last year. So our activity has been fantastic. That being said, the pre-approvals were really aggressive. We had a lot of them in January, not as many of them in February because, again, there's so much uncertainty out there right now that first-time home buyers, who generally are the ones that are getting pre-approved, are just sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what's going to happen with elections, with tariffs, with interest rates. We still expect interest rates to come down. We saw fixed rates come down this week. We are just on the fringe of the threes. So we've got a high ratio 5-year mortgage right now at 4.04. So we're right there on the threes. And with a little luck, if everything goes well, we'll be midway in the threes by the time summer comes around. And that's when I think we'll see the first-time home buyers really get off the fence.
Speaking of first-time home buyers, I was actually amazed that I put my 2 townhomes on the market. And I usually when you put your own homes on the market, you always overprice them or you make a mistake because you have so much invested in it. So I got 2 of my buddies who are very well-known realtors also in the area. And I said, listen, am I out to lunch? Here's what I'm doing. And their response was, Paul, these things will sell overnight. And I put them on at a reasonable price. I thought I was getting my asking price, maybe even a bidding war. Things were coming in 40, 50 grand under asking on offers. And I'm like, are you mad? Like, I turned down more offers on these properties than I think I've ever seen. And it just went to show me how unhealthy right now the first-time home buyer market is, because I literally thought they'd be scooped up in seconds. And now one took a week to sell, which is awesome, and one took 2 weeks to sell. I literally thought they were going to sell overnight, and I really thought I was going to get my asking price or more, and I didn't. Did
you get close to it?
I got very close to it, but still less than what I thought I should have got. But it was just, I thought the showings would be more. I thought there'd be more attention on them. I thought there'd be more first-time home buyers. There was not a lot on the market, and I completely renovated both of them. So I thought these things will fly off the shelf. No,
but here's how important it is to be able to know what the market is and be able to say, no, I'm not going to take that offer. I'm going to wait.
I turned down a couple offers that people are like, are you sure about that? I'm like, I'm dead sure about that because I know I'm going to get my price. And some people might have jumped at those offers. Now, it wouldn't have been much more, but it would have been $3, $4, $5, $6 more in my pocket. And it was just, I was more shocked at how few of showings and how few of offers I got. I literally thought I was going to get multiple offers.
Bad time of year, though, too, right?
It was a bad time of year, but I also thought the market was going to take off quicker, right? Yeah. But the other thing we talk about, like we talk about inflation, we talk about jobs, we talk about, the tariffs, we talk about interest rates. The one thing we didn't talk about was snow accumulation. Keep in mind, we haven't seen snow like this. We got more snow on the ground than we've seen in 2 decades, right? So, that was another variable that slowed things down. I mean, there was lots of people weren't looking at homes during major snowstorms like we've received, right? So, yeah.
521-TALK, 521-8255. We will be right back. Welcome back to the show. All right, let's get the name of the company out there properly.
Yeah, it's not a Little House on the Prairie, Steve.
Little Schoolhouse Garden Design and Landscaping.
Now, listen, I was gonna ask you, do you do any consulting at all with real estate agents so that they know what should be done to a home on the outside before they go ahead and list it?
Because you're going to have some people who just don't want to spend the money. They'd rather do them themselves. So do you do that consulting?
Yeah, we do a lot of that. And what we find is the real estate agent is the conduit between us and the buyer. And we'll work with the real estate agent and see we'll work out a couple different kinds of budgets, and they will take it to the seller. And they'll either agree on it or they'll not go with it. But usually that turns into work for us if they do agree upon the scenario that we put forward.
Because not everyone, like I know there's people that are selling that have a gorgeous house and they will spend that money to go over the top and potentially get an extra $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in their pocket. But there's a lot of people that don't see the vision and they're like, you know what? I need to do things as cheap as possible. I want the cheapest this, the cheapest that. I'm not putting $5,000 into a garden and plants and this and that. And so you will actually do a consultation and say, here's what we would do, put out a plan for them, charge them by the hour. And then if they want to do the work, they can do it themselves.
Absolutely. And God bless our realtors that we had during COVID, that we followed every single piece of their direction. And we learned that if you do follow your realtor's advice, that you get the maximum returns. And when you don't, they tend to sit on the market. And every time that they've proposed our services, it's been a windfall for them. There's usually been an increase in the original listing price as well, just because they see that outside curb appeal that you're talking about. It's huge.
And it's not always a lot of money, is it?
No, it depends on the lot size and what you're dealing with. Like if there's really, really bad neglected gardens, we might have to come in and do a full rip out, but that's on the upper echelon. If it's just a normal cleanup, we could be in for a half a day and it could be a couple $1,000s, or it can go up from there. It just depends on what we see during the initial consultation with the realtor. We always find it best to work alone with the realtor so they can be the conduit. And if there's too many people involved in the scenario, it can get a little bit tricky sometimes. So we usually work just with the realtor, and then they'll converse back what we say to the sellers.
You know, I know earlier, my girlfriend listens to the show all the time, and earlier you talked about...
For me.
For Stephen, yes, of course, for his manly voice. But she would have heard water features. So it's the first thing she's going to say is they do water features. And so that's what you guys probably heard. What I heard was water feature. And Frank thinking, oh, I can sit back in the backyard with a water feature and my little drink with an umbrella and my Speedo. That's what Frank was thinking, right,
that
Frank?
Was good right up until that.
But you do water features as well.
We do. It's a new segment that we're breaking into because it's a natural extension of a garden, and water features have come a long way in the past 25 years, where it's not like where you're digging a big hole and putting rocks and stuff in it. You can get pondless water features, water fountains now, which is basically there's a basin below the water feature that holds the water and recirculates it. And we've teamed up with a company in the U.S. called Aquascape, who has a big market share in the water feature business. And basically, we can install all of their fountains. They do pondless waterfalls, which are 6 to 8 foot waterfalls that we can put in probably in a day or two, maybe 3 days if we have to use our heavy equipment. And they've just turned out, they're beautiful. They're zen-like. You can sit in your backyard and you actually have a central focus in your backyard around your gardens. And
boy, there's nothing more relaxing than that.
Oh, there's nothing more relaxing.
It's beautiful. If you do go to aquascape.com, we're not officially with them, but that's who our product supplier is. You can see koi ponds that are like 30 feet, and they're absolutely stunning. Now, you're looking at $100,000 for the big stuff, but the smaller...
Does that include the fish?
The The smaller
But
stuff,
6 to 8 foot waterfall's pretty substantial.
a 6 to 8 waterfall is about $10,000 installed. They're absolutely gorgeous. You can see lots of examples on the internet. The other cool thing that they're doing is the smaller water fountains that are like bowls spilling into other bowls or little water features. They're at about the $3,000 to $5,000 range, and you can put them in about a day.
That's reasonable, actually. 3 to 5 if you're putting a good renovation in your backyard.
Yeah, the warranties on these products are absolutely incredible. We stand by everything that we do. So, and the company that I was speaking about, Aquascape, they're out of Illinois. So winterizing this stuff is quite easy, very, very easy to do. Yeah.
Because that's one question right here in Canada. I mean, we were in when we were in Costa Rica, we did a lot of cold plunges and there's hot tubs and all that kind of stuff. And
That was a bad image.
But anyways, there was a couple of people that are like, oh yeah, I have a cold plunge in my backyard and a hot tub in my backyard. And I'm like, oh, where do you live? Like, oh, Florida. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I live in Ottawa, Canada, and so it's like minus 40
You can
there.
do it, though. You can do it.
Yeah, right. But here in Ottawa, I don't know a company that you can go to for a cold plunge that goes below minus 10.
Oh,
I
really?
know a couple companies that will go to minus 10, but in Ottawa here, you pretty much have to have your cold plunge in your garage in the wintertime, and it's not this, unless you have just one of those buckets you put out back, but if you want that pump, anyways, we're not a cold plunge show, but anyways.
Frank, what are the odds if tariffs come in that we're going to go back to sort of COVID days where people are going to want a nice property and hunker down and save some money?
Happen with tariffs. I mean, most people will be likely, unfortunately, one of the stats that I read this week is that if the tariffs as presented right now took effect, the job losses would be in excess of 500,000 in Canada and in excess of 400,000 in the U.S. Pretty significant job losses there. So not like COVID, where during COVID, people were still getting paid, government was handing out money. Again, people were working from home, so they wanted, and they thought it was going to last forever. So all of a sudden, they wanted the nice homes. Listen, I opened my pool, I think, the end of March in 2020, where you could never do that before. So the weather was outstanding, actually. The one thing I remember about COVID is that it felt like spring happened early that year. So, but, interest rates are likely to come down, but I think fixed rates will be a little more gradual. And depending on the tariffs, I think that we could see some aggressive rate drops as far as prime rate is concerned. And hopefully what could make a comeback is the prime minus 90, the prime minus 1 would be nice to see as well.
Because Frank, what are we now? Minus 8.5, minus 8, something like that?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, anywhere between prime minus 60 to prime minus 80 tends to be the norm right now.
And what would it take to bring that variance down?
Well, the cost of funds to go down, and that's always what it's about. And the cost of funds generally go down when we're in a scenario like we might be in with the tariffs, where there's going to be some stimulus. There's going to be government having to really be a part of trying to keep jobs online as long as possible. But again, I mean, I think the country needs to fix their interprovincial tariffs. Hopefully, that's moving forward. And then I think the country, our country, Canada, needs to set up trade agreements with other countries for some of the stuff that we have so that we're not so reliant on the U.S. moving forward, that this doesn't happen.
We've seen some of I was away, but I still looked at the news. Did we not see some of our interprovincial tariffs kiboshed, or are they still, is that just
talking about it?
They're talking about it. I think that's huge. They did that. I mean, there's
should have been done
long time ago, but there's a lot of things that we can get from other provinces in this country that should not have a tariff on it. They really shouldn't. And
well, certainly shouldn't cost more than some you can get from the States.
Yeah.
You're next door to the province,
I just want to thank you, Andrew. My girlfriend Petra is now sending me water features from from your website. She's like, oh, yeah, that's great. Awesome.
I've just got 2 inquiries already on my cell phone that is coming through.
Oh, there you go.
So,
there you
yeah.
go. Who knew?
Again, very small commission.
We up to 100,000.
Yeah, but literally getting back to those tariffs, I'm glad you said that, Frank, because that would go a long way to easing some pain for Canadians if we get rid of some of those interprovincial tariffs. And you're right, Steve, it would stopping us from going to the States for some things that are more expensive if we go through our own country.
Yeah, artificially more expensive.
Yes,
because of the trade barriers.
Exactly.
Now, explain these rates to me, Frank. I know I seem to ask this quite often. You can get a 3-year at 409. You can get a 5-year at 404. Why is the 4-year at 4.39? It doesn't make any sense to me.
It's bond market usually. I mean, the bond and some lenders, and actually we saw a 2-year this week at 4.24, which is absolutely fabulous right now. So we're seeing some of the shorter term rates come down. We're not there on the 4-year yet, but we're almost there on the 1, the 2, and the 3-year. They're all fairly similar price, which is awesome. And that's the direction that we need to head into, because as the uncertainty continues, Canadians want to have an option of a 1 or 2 year. If they think that rates are likely coming down, but they're nervous being in a variable rate mortgage, some Canadians will be very happy to have a 1 or 2 year term for now and see what happens with rates moving forward.
So what's your recommendation today?
My recommendation today is still a variable, because I do think that the variable is your best option, because I do believe the prime rate will come down a little bit more aggressively than fixed rates will. That being said, if we can get, but 2 years is a long time. That's my point. Mm-hmm. So the 1 years, unfortunately, are still very high. They're in the high 4s, low 5s. So if you're going to take a 1 year because you think the rates are coming down, then I would rather see you take a variable, because the likelihood is that the variable rate mortgage will be lower than the 1 year mortgage right from the onset, and even more even lower as we go through 2025 and prime rate comes down.
Why would you take a 1 year mortgage as opposed to a variable? Doesn't make sense to me.
You might want to sell your property in a year, right? So maybe you're thinking, I'm only going to stay in this house for 1 more year, so I'm going to sell at the end of a year. So that eliminates penalties altogether if that was the case. You don't know again, there's something on the horizon that prevents you from locking in and having to pay a penalty. That would be the biggest reason to do it.
Yeah, otherwise I don't see it.
No, I mean, you could take a variable. I mean, you're still going to have a penalty, but it's only going to be 3 months interest, which, depending on your mortgage, shouldn't be crazy.
If you want to get out of that 1 year early, where are you at?
Well, usually 3 months interest, because the likelihood is that you're near the end of it anyway. Yeah. So, and if you're in less than 3 months left, then most banks will charge you less than the 3 months. They'll charge you the interest rate differential to completion. So if you're a month out, your penalty will be much less restrictive than if you were in a 2, 3, or 4 year and you had more time left on the mortgage.
So nice of the banks.
Well, they're poor. They're not making a lot of money, are they?
Yeah. Did you see the numbers this week? Wow. It's crazy. They're not hurting at all. So this has had very little impact on them.
Didn't Scotia go down a little bit, though?
Scotia went down, but Royal Bank was a touch over $5 billion for 3 months. Touch over $5 billion in net profits in a 3-month period. Think about that for a second.
How are they surviving on that?
I know. When do we start the
incredible?
campaign?
Yeah, we need
a Royal Bank Kickstarter.
Yeah.
521-TALK, 521-8255. We'll be right back. We're back to the show.
It's been a great show. I mean, Andrew's here, Frank's not, which is just a blessing, and so it's been a great show. But I do miss you, Frank. But
Frank's lucky he doesn't get to see either of us.
Yes.
So he's way ahead.
He's way ahead for sure.
Still alive
Previous
there, Frank?
2 shows were better, but anyway.
The 2 shows I wasn't on, yeah.
So listen, we got the time change next weekend.
Oh, is it next weekend?
That usually kickstarts things a little bit, makes it a little bit easier for you to take photos and get inspections.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Greg, what are your last appointments now for photos? Like, when is it? Because you're usually a couple hours in some places.
Yeah, so I try to wrap them up. I try to wrap up right now by about 5 o'clock. At the latest.
Yeah.
To get them done. It's always tricky when the sun's setting, because you're getting really weird angles on stuff. And I know people love our property's beautiful when the sun's setting. It's really hard to capture that in a photo and make it look appealing to everybody. So try to get them in the middle of the day as much as possible for the best even lighting.
We sometimes people shop on quality and sometimes they shop on price, right? We lost a listing recently that I had to get involved with, and I was chatting with the people, and I was talking about all the services we do and the quality and the value we bring and all that stuff. And then we got into Greg and what Greg does with the professional photos and the videos and the drone shots and, room measurements and everything he does to make the house just look unbelievable. And we lost that listing, and I remember going to take a look at the listing. Remember the years ago I showed you the picture of the realtor taking the picture and he's in the bathroom mirror?
Yes.
Yeah, that was they took iPhone photos for the listing, and I'm just like, I felt sorry for them at first because I'm like, okay, you might have saved yourself a half point on commission on that one, but good luck selling your property.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Well, depending on what's in the mirror, you could.
Yeah, but it goes with the value, and if you don't have the value there in order to sell someone's biggest asset, you're just not going to get the dollar in your pocket. And even when we went through COVID, when everyone thought a monkey could sell a property, and sometimes a monkey could sell a property. But we talked about the difference between getting $10,000 over asking and $100,000 asking is a big job. It's a big difference, and people were leaving a lot of money on the table, and they still are.
So listen, with all these things going on, all these variables, tariff, interest rates, federal election possible, what's your recommendation for people who want to get rid of a house?
Well, listen, homes are still selling. I mean, I'm not going to say they're not selling, but the problem is that sellers' expectations are still sort of COVID expectations. We still have some sellers that, my neighbor 3 years ago sold for $900. I'm like, well, 3 years ago was a different market. Yeah. Things are going for like, $780 in your area right now, $775. So the biggest thing that we're doing right now, and what we have to do is education. So I make sure my realtors are so educated. Sometimes the seller's not going to listen to us. They need their process. Yes, their house is going to sit on the market for an extra couple months because they don't listen to what we talk about in pricing and strategy, and they think their house is going to hit that home run. But the one thing you have to do in today's market is educate the sellers on what's really happening in the market. We're in a different market. It's a challenging market. And the nice thing about this market is you really need the best to get your home sold. It's not anyone can sell a house in this market. And a good chunk of what we do is not only the pictures and showcasing it and advertising and marketing it, but is also having those honest conversations and strategizing around what someone actually needs in order to get their home sold and what they need to do price-wise to get their home sold. Occasionally they don't listen, but I'm telling you right now in this market, if you're not listening to price, you're making a big mistake if you're not listening to what we have to say on price. And we bring that forensic evidence. We show you what should be the price of your property. And occasionally they don't listen, but they're going to sit on the market longer if that happens, and they're going to get less in their pocket. Saying that, homes are still selling. We're not in a bad market. We're just in a different market, and we're not in that COVID market. Things will rotate. Things will change. Right now sellers are a little bit grumpy. Very shortly, buyers are going to be a little bit grumpy, and sellers are going to be very happy. So
I think the weather will make a big difference.
The weather always makes a difference. Even the time change. Seeing sun until 6 o'clock rather than 5 o'clock is also a big difference. Seeing the snow melt is also a big difference. Starting to see grass and then eventually when the plants come out and the gardens come out and the beautiful green grass and pools are open, that's when people start to get that optimism and then they want to start buying properties. So it'll come.
Frank, for a first-time home buyer that wants to pull the trigger, what's their first step with you?
Well, first step is getting pre-approved, getting formally pre-approved. There's a difference between a soft pre-approval and a true pre-approval. A soft pre-approval is, and the banks are promoting, we could do it in 30 seconds. Well, yeah, you could, but if I had $1 for every time that somebody told me what their income is, and then once you get their paperwork, it's not identical, especially if you've got various hours, you're not permanent full-time. So all those come into play, and they're so important when it comes to getting pre-approved, because the last thing you want to do is get this soft pre-approval, start looking at homes only to go through the whole process of paying for a home inspection, paying for an appraisal, and then the paperwork, the bank says, yeah, no, you don't actually qualify for this mortgage. Now you've wasted the realtor's time, and you've set your expectations wrong. So, again, get pre-approved, get a true pre-approval. That's the best way to do it.
Frank, it's funny you say that. When I was selling my 2 townhomes over the last couple of weeks, the first thing I would say to another realtor when they brought me a client is, are they pre-approved? Well, they told me they were. I'm like, hold on. Yeah. Did they talk to someone about a pre-approval? And when you talk about this 60-second or this 30-second pre-approval online by certain banks, I would say 40 to 50% of people are like, yeah, they did this thing online with such and such a bank. I'm like, okay, that's not a formal pre-approval.
That should be the first thing.
Well, that's the first thing I asked. Have you talked to a mortgage broker? Have you talked to a banker? Do you know that you have a letter that says, yes, you can afford this price? And unless I got that, I was not accepting an offer because there's a big difference between a soft and a hard pre-approval.
Birthdays, Frank?
Yeah, just a couple. Isabel, who works at our MIC at AMIC, celebrates her birthday this week, as well as my have to add the vowels in there. My brother-in-law Mario celebrates his birthday on Thursday, so happy birthday to Mario.
I have a couple. Obviously, Jocelyn White, who's the backbone of my company, who's been with me now as of the 17th while I was away. 20 years Jocelyn's been with me, and I've only been in the business just a shy over 20 years. I thought it was 20, but apparently a little bit more. So happy anniversary, Jocelyn. And then, of course, we have a big one coming up Monday. Mr. Greg Tilley, who's sitting with us in the studio, turns the big 5-1 on Monday. So happy birthday, Greg.
You guys make me feel a little bit better about myself every year.
We're catching up, Steve.
My sister's birthday today, too.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Little Schoolhouse.
Hello.
How do we get a hold of you? What's your website?
Yeah, we have a new website. It should be launched this week. Just go to www.littleschoolhouse.ca and take a look. There's lots of before and after photos and everything we talked about today, and give us a shout. We'd love to talk to you.
Is this the calm before the storm for you?
It is. We're starting to take a lot of business on right now. A lot of repeat customers are coming back.
So for bookings in Kingston, they should probably get a hold of you sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we took on a bunch of new staff this year. Lovely Queen's students that we love to hire.
Awesome.
And we're looking forward to a great summer. And yeah.
Do you do any of the heavy lifting?
I do all the heavy lifting.
Oh, that's a hell of a job.
So Andrew Rodmell, thank you very much for coming on the show. And one of the reasons is you align with what Frank and I always talk about. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Frank, anything you want to say in closing?
Thanks for the landscaping credit. I'll be in touch with you, Andrew. Landscaping.
Have a great week, everybody.
Have a great week.
And support local Canadian businesses and charities, everyone.